Welcome to another episode of the Tech Exec series for NTP Podcast. Today we're down in Melbourne for the first time with Matt Vitale, Exec Director at New Dialogue.
Awesome,
Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, super excited to be here today. I think it's you're on a big journey at the moment. You're right in the thick of the AI space. It's the topic everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
But you got a really interesting background before that.
Yeah.
Let's start at your background for people that don't know who you are. Let's go through that. Lawyer, virtual, where we're at today.
Yeah, look, I've recently joined New Dialogue as an executive director, so really keen to share a bit about that. But I've just come off about 6 months of career break, a pause. I co-founded and ran Virtual, which is Australia's largest equity crowdfunding platform. I ran that business for 8 years. We were among the pioneers of equity crowdfunding in Australia. It's a new regime, a really exciting contribution to the fundraising landscape. And, we helped business raise over 250 million, over 300 successful offers. That journey was incredible. It was, an amazing and really rewarding ride to be on. But after 8 years at it, I, for a variety of reasons, just felt like I needed a break. I suppose here I am after some travel. Went to Colombia, spent some time in Japan, and then started working with a few businesses. Doing consulting and advisory. I'm a lawyer by background. I still have a practicing certificate, and it was great to just get back working with people that are building things again, and getting really deeply embedded in some of their most difficult problems that range from go to market to capital raising, and then working with Todd and the team at New Dialogue. It became apparent that they've got something that's pretty special, and the time is right, and there's some exciting things that have happened even this week that validate that they've got something really special. And what I've learned is, you need to go fast, and nothing can be truer than that in this environment as well.
Well, especially in this day and age, mate. We'll get to that space real quick. You mentioned a couple of things there.
Yeah.
The story from legal to a fintech startup, was that scratching your own itch? Was you seen an opportunity in the market? How did that come about? What started that journey for you for Virtual?
Yeah, my journey to becoming a lawyer was I suppose took a winding track in itself. I think that's probably, if I reflect on my life, it has been a long and winding journey with, lots of really diverse experiences, which has been awesome.
And it's probably set you up really well to be in the position you're at now, working with different industries, different verticals.
I think that's true of everyone. If you're being honest, you are where you are, and your story kind of informs the contribution that you can make wherever you find yourself. But yes, absolutely, because I've had lots of really diverse experiences. I probably wasn't a great student when I was first out of high school. I took a gap year. I lived in Vietnam for a few months. I traveled Europe. I came back, started a sugarcane juice machine. I was probably 15 years ahead of the curve. It was like importing machines and then manufacturing them locally. It was absolute disaster.
Yeah.
Took 6 years to complete an arts degree, probably because I was spending too much time in nightclubs and kind of, promoting and getting people to, come and drink on a Thursday night. And then at some point, I felt like I needed to grow up, and I needed a professional backing. And I was inspired by, what's called an admission ceremony, which my girlfriend at the time was admitted as a lawyer, and the Chief Justice explained, in the legal profession, there's this concept of lawyers being officers of the court and having a higher duty, to the law and to the court, even over and above their clients, which was a novel concept for me at the time, and I was really taken by it. And then I got into a postgraduate law degree at Monash. And, from a 6-year arts degree, I finished the law degree in 2 years. But I was just, when I had shown myself that when I'm on mission, when I really want to go after something, I can make it happen really quickly.
That's probably fantastic career advice for anyone, right? Like, you can dabble in things, but when you see somebody that's super passionate about an area, they're the people whose careers, career trajectory accelerates phenomenally, right?
Totally. I think I was lucky. There was a lot of good fortune there. I had, great people around me that, that supported me and were nudging me in the right direction. Like, many times that I could have gone off the rails, but that's partly about me. That's partly about the people that I surrounded myself with. But I kind of always remained in the system, I suppose. But when I was on, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I need to do. And it was hard work, but it wasn't hard, if that makes sense. And then, I was fortunate enough to get a job at a pretty good law firm, and fortunate because it was like the wake of the GFC. It was a really difficult time. But then my legal career was it was really rewarding. Like, I hear lots of people that say terrible things about private practice, and I'm not in it anymore, right? So it wasn't a good fit long term for me. But the things that I learned in that environment, there's real value. There's real value in that, and got the opportunity to work with some amazing clients. I specialised in financial services, and that then, I suppose, kind of led me to what would come next with equity crowdfunding. And I saw what was happening in the UK in the space, and helping large clients raise capital, seeing how complicated, risky and expensive it was, and then seeing that, if you're a big business, you have all of these options to source capital, but for small businesses, the options are pretty narrow, that anything that could be done to broaden the field would be better for everyone from a systems perspective, because the status quo tended towards favors large incumbents. So that was something I got really passionate about. And I remember talking to partners that I was working for, look, what's happening in the UK, this is going to be a thing. And, some were supportive, but most were like, this is never going to happen. Early stage business venture, it's an asset class too risky for retail investors. But then the government put out a discussion paper, and I had the chutzpah to, make a humble submission. And then that put me on the radar for a range of people that were in the space. And I just started having conversations, and then met my co-founder at Birchall, Alan, who had started a reward crowdfunding platform, and we got working together on, how we could make a contribution to the space.
Yeah, wow. Mate, you just mentioned network a couple of times. You put yourself in the right space, surrounded by the right people.
Yeah.
And then you started with a co-founder.
Yep.
I think that startup journey for a lot of people, if you're an individual, can be really challenging.
Yep.
What's the importance for you in hindsight on having that right co-founder?
For me at the time, there were lots of things that I just didn't know about the startup space. Yep. I was a lawyer, and really startup space, I'm talking, 2016. It was pretty nascent back then. It's changed so much. And I think at Birchall, we did made a big contribution to accelerating the development of the startup ecosystem. But Yeah, absolutely. Having someone that complements your skills, I think is really important. But also, and, you know, given my time again, I think, you know, some of the things I learned about myself was just to back myself more at those critical moments. But these are things that, you know, you learn over time.
Yeah, and would obviously set you up really well for, you know, the second coming or this new venture as well.
Yeah.
Mate, just on the virtual part for a second, biggest success stories, I know I've read quite a few and doing my background on you, but mate, biggest success stories or things you look back on really positively in that journey?
Look, there were so many. Sheba Rideshare was probably the first breakout success, and you know that was 2019. We helped them raise $3 million, and George McEncroe was, you know, such an inspiring founder, and probably the perfect story for Birchal, because he was someone that had an amazing idea, you know, deep understanding of her customers. You know, for listeners that don't know, like Sheba Rideshare was an all-women rideshare for, you know, as an alternative to Uber.
Yeah.
So women riders, women drivers, and they, I suppose, captivated, you know, the hearts and minds of their users, because, you know, George had high conviction that this was a service that was absolutely needed, you know, deep empathy for, you know, customers and drivers, but she couldn't raise capital. It's, you know, it was probably, you know, the highest profile, you know, demonstration of a founder that was underserved by, you know, this ecosystem that's there to support innovation. And she came to us, and I think the statistic was like 94% of the investors in that round were female investors.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And it became an archetype that then made us a lightning rod for all of these people that saw the opportunity of building a community, you know, to raise capital. Unfortunately, like for Sheba, you know, Melbourne was kind of where they had their biggest footprint, and, you know, we've headed into COVID, and if any business is going to struggle, you know, probably an undercapitalized rideshare business when, you know, in the midst of the lockdowns are going to kind of meet some challenges. But, you know, but for, you know, our partnership and how we helped them raise that capital, you know, they wouldn't have gotten to the point that they did, and the service still exists. So, which is great, but obviously it wasn't the, you know, ultimate investment outcome that everyone wanted. But it's probably the story that, you know, fills me with pride the most, because I think it's a big reason why Birchal is needed and exists, is that it does level the playing field for ideas. That, you know, if you've got a good idea and you work hard and you know, are building in response to demand, and you can tell that story, then, you know, it's possible to make magic happen.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that. There's a couple of parts that I really, really love, is that storytelling element and the building a community. And I think, as you said, that lesson and the success there has continually evolved in the startup space as well. And that storytelling and building of a community and then building a product for that community is that real formula right now for, it doesn't have to be the greatest and latest tech, but it just has to be something that serves a purpose for a community. And that's the thing that's having some success, especially in the crowdfunding space. Yeah,
absolutely. And it should be intuitive, right? And, you know, I'd see this a lot with founders. I don't know what it is, but there's often a reluctance to just get out there and talk to customers. And, you know, I have to be mindful of my spiritual detours a lot, but like, because it's, you know, it's an important part of my life. But I think it says a lot about us as individuals, this fear of rejection, this fear of failure. You know, you have a conversation with someone and you're underprepared and maybe you look stupid, and And I think a lot of these things hold people back from just getting out there and talking to customers. And often, at an extreme example, we'll see people that have invested, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in a solution, but haven't chatted to a customer.
Yeah.
And there's so much that can be done, particularly with all of the tools that are available now, to just get out there and talk to people and build in response to what they want. And we sometimes see this with people that are like, real subject matter experts in their field. And they may be right, and the market may not be on their level of intelligence, but you got to meet people where they are. And it's kind of getting back to basics. Like, what is the problem that you're solving? Who cares about it? Will they pay for it, and build for that?
Yeah, the third part right there, will they pay for it, right? Like, I think, and I've spoken about this many times, there's 1,000 really well-built apps in the App Store, architected beautifully, codes schmick. No one knows about the apps because they don't have a need or nobody wants them.
Yep.
And it's happening right now in the AI space where you can be the best engineer going around, write something beautifully. No one knows about it. It's not really solving a problem. There's other people out there making a lot of money right now, just wrapping a bunch of different products together, throwing a little bow on top, and it serves a purpose and people are prepared to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say often, and maybe, doing ourselves out of work at Birchal, but, best source of capital is revenue. It's like, if you can sell something to someone, just do that. Yeah. And, raise capital for the right reasons. Now, this isn't true in every scenario, but I think it's mostly true. Capital raising, it should be easy. You want to get to the point where it's a no-brainer. I'd say, it's just add capital. There's, these just add water scenario. It's just this thing's ready to go. You just add water and it grows. And that's how you should view capital. You get to this position where it's just we've done everything that we can possibly do with the resources that we have. But we're actually at this point where we've thought of everything and all we need is the capital. Just simplify it for investors. Yeah,
it's an acceleration tool, right?
Absolutely.
And it's especially in the software game because software is so easy to spin up now and so cheap to spin up. Products are a little bit different where if you can get a product even in an MVP stage and then get somebody to actually try it, like it, and then put their dollars in the pocket, then you can actually turn product and start to scale that out. That is the harder one, I imagine, for the real need for, I guess, a crowdfunding platform as well. The real product, hardcore product, is that point of differentiation, whereas software, significantly easier and cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We, as the business evolved at Birchal, we saw where we felt that the market was underserved and, we had a role to play. So last year, we were fortunate to receive a $300,000 grant from LaunchVic to stand up a specialized angel network focusing specifically on hardware technology businesses.
Yeah, beautiful.
Because we just heard all the time from founders that, investors don't like hardware. It's too risky, it's too, complicated. And then some hardware businesses doing everything that they could to describe themselves as software businesses. Yeah. But we also had a good understanding of the investors in our audience. Birchal had audience 300,000 members on the platform, and some really active investors, and they're not just mum and dad investors. In contrast to the generally a held belief that it's just kind of mum and dads putting in small amounts of money. There are some pretty sophisticated investors that like the direct access to a founder that a platform like Birchal gives. But many of them want to invest in hardware businesses for a variety of reasons. Maybe they've made money in hardware, and they feel like they're able to add value or, assess the risks. So we got a grant to set up this network, and it was amazing. We, put a stake in the ground and say, this is what we're for. We think that there are some amazing hardware technology stories in Australia, and we want we want to be the place where founders and investors can find them. And it's still underway, but we raised for 3 hardware businesses in the last 3 months of last year, just under $2 million. And it is by far and away been the most successful specialized angel network that LaunchVic has funded. And is barely 12 months in.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Up in Newcastle as well, there's an organisation called the Moat doing the exact same thing, accelerating a fund specialising in hardware.
Yeah.
And they've got quite a few success stories at the moment. Difference is it's a longer game to get that money out. So it's a different investment theory. Like if you're looking for that quick win, that quick exit, it's a longer play. But as you said, there's specialists, there's people that specialise in that, have that longer game approach. And there's some massive upside there as well.
Yeah.
But there was a big need for it because Australia I guess across the world it was always software. Yeah, that's why you're seeing the big X's, the big returns, the big multipliers, right?
Yeah. Except that there are some amazing stories in Australia that they're just not told enough.
Correct.
So people think of Cochlear and absolutely amazing, but like Neura, John Gregory's business, Vitruvian, amazing. He built it from Perth, from his garage. Like there are just so many of these stories that need to be told.
Correct.
So then people are out there, if I see it, I can be it.
Yeah.
So
it's that storytelling element again, right?
Absolutely.
No, perfect. Mate, we'll get out of that journey into your next journey in a second, but I think there's one part in the middle which is often not spoken about in the startup world. Startups and founder success stories are very sexy, great to put in the newspapers, great to hear of your multiples returns. But you did have 6 months off the earlier this year. You mentioned the word burnout. I think when you're a founder, you're all in on a business, very hard to turn your mind off at night, I imagine, very hard to not take that call after hours, the email first thing in the morning. And talk to me about that journey, that decision to take that break, because I think it's a really important one and something that should be spoken about in this space.
Yeah. No, thank you. It's, look, as you say, you can't switch off. And, I had a co-founder. I ended up being a solo founder. And, that brought its challenges. And, if I look back, the things that we achieved, I was often the shock absorber. Like the externality was me and my well-being and my health on so many levels. But you do it, and we had a particularly brutal year last year, 24. So we raised capital at the end of 23 on a positive growth agenda. We'd had our second busiest quarter ever. We were expecting, 2024 to be a great year. Yeah. It's a seasonal business, so January, February is, typically a quiet period for raising capital because, people love going to the beach, not really thinking about investing. Or I think it's more the point that they're not thinking about working on their offer documents. It's more on the company side of getting ready. It's actually a really good time to raise capital, but we'll see. And we were running pretty rich, and perhaps seduced by the pipeline and expecting that things were going to improve, and then the growth just didn't show up, and activity was still strong, but all of the funding volumes were a lot lower, and we needed to take action quickly. And as a regulated business, you can't sail as close to the wind as other businesses can. Yeah. We needed to implement a pretty drastic cost out program, and that was really hard because in a business like ours, it's it's people, and it was it was a tough thing to navigate, but we got through it well. It's we need to do more with less fundamentally, and the team, the team all rallied around this mission, and saw like how everyone was pitching in, and I kind of talk about how hard it was for me, but it was equally and perhaps harder for the team. I had agency, but they were kind of part of the mission, and needed to support me, and they did, and trust that we were going to get through, and we did. That specialized angel network I mentioned, that was us accelerating into this, I suppose, existential crisis by introducing new revenue lines and thinking differently about business and thinking bigger, which these near-death experiences kind of thrust upon you. It's probably a little bit frustrating that, you look at what we achieved with, 2/3 of the team.
And it takes that crisis for you to make that pivot or to have that acceleration, which is, in hindsight, why did it take that as well? But it's often the case for many organisations, right? It takes a bit of a crisis or something to have a look differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we navigated it really well, and introduced new revenue lines, a bunch of things that we've been talking about for years. We accelerated literally in a matter of weeks, and so cost out, revenue up, job done. And the team and the way that we all kind of rallied to do that was just inspiring. But as a seasonal business, our cash reserves probably weren't going to get us through that January, February period. And as I mentioned, being a regulated business, like we just can't, sail as close to the wind as other businesses. So we're back raising capital, second time within a 12-month period. And it was all capital raisings are difficult. And, we raised over $2 million in the week before Christmas.
Wow.
Yeah, because there was a belief in what we were doing, and it was extremely validating, and to have that support. But like throughout this whole period, there was some personal challenges that that I was kind of working through as well. And in any other business, you'd probably take a few months off, but you can't do that in a startup business. It's you mic drop and maybe the company dies, and I suppose kind of pushing through to save the company essentially and kind of guide it through another existential period. At the end of all of that, I was cooked. Like there's a price to pay, and so over the break, I started to think about like where I was at, and if I was right, and probably wasn't, and it was obvious I needed to step away, and then things kind of like moved really quickly. And I'm happy to say, Birchal now has an awesome CEO in Kirsten Hunter. The board moved really swiftly to, put in place a, interim CEO, managing the CEO transition. And then, it was so lucky that Kirsten fell in love with the business and the opportunity and threw her hat in the ring for it. And it's on its own journey now.
Yeah.
It's not founder-led anymore, but it gets to kind of live on, with, I suppose, a fresher perspective and someone that, I suppose has a different frame of reference to the value that we provide, which is a really exciting thing because, I gave everything I could and more
Yeah.
to that business, and I care about it deeply, but my future is elsewhere.
Yeah. Mate, a couple of things there. First, acknowledgement. As you said, you got in that tough time, but you built a community to be able to raise that money to get it out. And you've obviously done such a phenomenal job to build a strong community that got behind you when you were in that need, and then also built something that somebody else fell in love with enough to take that CEO role. And you don't pick up people at that level unless you've built something really solid that people want to jump into. So there's a strong acknowledgement there.
Yeah.
But then also the acknowledgement, and I've spoken to quite a few founders about this, where you're a founder, you're an ideas person, you're a builder, and then you get to that point in your career where, as on that startup journey, your job just becomes fundraising, and you're going through one fundraising round, and then you're just working on financials, and then another fundraising round, and that's not the job a lot of founders signed up for. And it's you take the love out of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And I've spoken to a lot of founders just find that journey really challenging, and then you lose that love for it because it's, as you said, a really difficult time to go through that journey over and over.
I'm in furious agreement with you. I don't know how it can be different. It has to, and founders should always be raising.
Yeah.
CEOs always. It's not something that I think if you're doing it well, you're just constantly cultivating, your audience of potential investors or potential sources of capital. Updating stakeholders. It just should be this just constant fluid motion.
Yeah.
The thing, I hope people see that I'm a transparent, open book, because I feel that I am, but that can be exhausting as well, because you want to be straight and honest with people. So, when you're making promises, I'll describe it as, giving away pieces of your soul. It is a really, I think for me, and I think for anyone that is taking external capital, it is something that needs to be treated with deep respect and reverence, that you're not going to be kind of frivolous with people's money, and you're going to do what you say. And I always took that commitment very seriously.
Yeah.
And I think it's why, through the tough times, quitting was not an option.
Yeah.
You have to find a way through this, and
it takes its toll.
It does, but I know that's what investors look for. I'm trying to find a more sustainable way of making a contribution, but also not being so kind of I suppose binary or totally I suppose on all the time.
Yeah. So. It's also a trait, I imagine, that makes you very backable second time around, and hopefully leads to some success again now. But big acknowledgement for that self-awareness to actually be in that position to realise, hey, I'm giving all I've got and I'm close to, there's no more to give. Because I think a lot of people get to that stage and just continue to burn and burn and burn. So I think that self-awareness stage is phenomenal to be able to make that decision, which I imagine was a very difficult decision, and then take the time. So if you had any advice for anyone else that might be in that same position at the moment, is there anything that did you take is there a little bit of time to understand where you're at and where you want to be? Is there any advice that you could give to anyone else that might be in a similar situation?
I think giving yourself permission to spend some time on yourself, and everyone's on their own journey, and finding things that are that are helpful for you to, be still and forgive yourself and forgive other people and like let go. And for me, that's been, spirituality, particularly Eastern spirituality, things that I probably wasn't interested in, many years ago, but have become more and more interested in over the last few years. And it's a daily practice. It's, for me, what that looks like is, meditation, breathing, long walks, and just, I suppose, noticing, my feelings and not getting too wrapped up in them. Like everything passes, and being present is should be the aspiration.
I love it, and I love it is an aspiration. It's so difficult to do, and I think personality traits that lead to founders being successful in who they are can be that all-in. Can look like ADHD sometimes. It can look like that all-in mentality, and the self-awareness or the opportunity to take some peace, have a look at it from one step away, get out of the weeds, can be very challenging for founders, but also can be the best success or can lead to the biggest success because you can get out of the day-to-day and have a look from a high perspective, because when you're the best version of you, you're going to be the best version of you as a leader, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, mate, now we'll get on this exciting where we're at the moment. Talk to me about, you've had the 6 months off. AI is everywhere in technology at the moment. You've obviously played highly regulated fin services. I'm sure you've had multiple people knocking down your door. What's next for you? So, hey, what led you to the decision, to the journey you're on now?
I mean, like everyone, I've been super interested in AI, and I'm, not going to kind of roll out the platitudes that people are about AI at the moment, but like when GPT-3 was released, it, really captivated me, and I've just been, working with it as much as I can over the last few years. My time off really lent into it. It was a great opportunity. I found myself with time. I've used it personally for, health and fitness and nutrition and spirituality, professionally to learn. It's incredible. And I was working with a handful of businesses, and that was a great way to kind of like ease myself back in. And I found myself in a position where, the role I was in before is, CEO of an intermediary platform, lots of interesting stuff comes across your desk, but conflicts everywhere. So you can't, hop in with anyone. And then, I was in this amazing new paradigm where like actually, I could start working more closely with these businesses. And Todd and what it's built at New Dialogue, and I was introduced to Todd through Brendan, a mutual friend of ours. Brendan's that head of revenue, but Todd was interested in working with me to look at what he'd built at New Dialogue. And once I got my head around what it was and the opportunity, I got really excited. And like everything, you just need to move fast. Like nothing has ever been, that statement has never been truer or more important. So I said to Todd, I want to help you do this. Yeah. And we launched a few weeks ago, and the response has been phenomenal. Yeah. And we've got a product in market, which I think is rare at the moment. There's lots of people wanting to, operate in this space or, talking about what New Dialogue has done. Now that will very soon kind of cease to be the case. There's lots of people that are going to kind of move into this area. I think it's a great thing because open source is, we're high conviction that open source is the future for enterprise AI. And we can accelerate adoption by all of us working together and actually, just getting started, because so many businesses are seeing the world change around them and they don't know where to start.
Yeah, because I think where we're at right now, and it'll probably be different in a couple of weeks, a lot of individuals, as you said, have started with using ChatGPT or something like that, and they're putting a little bit, it's helping them on an individual basis.
Yeah.
How can we do this from a commercial perspective? And it can be a bit loosey-goosey to start with. And I guess the big problem from where I see that you guys are coming in is enterprise level and highly regulated, because at the moment this is where the big challenges are. People using open source and then people just feeding company data into there, unsecure, unregulated. And is this where the problem is? This is sell for you guys at the moment, what you're doing? Is there any examples at the moment of companies you're working with that face these challenges? Because we've gone on this journey where data was everything, right? And everyone's got to get the data in the right spot. How can you architect and build your data lake and then get data engineers? And then we started with the ML, but everything was really secure on the data perspective to start with. And now I feel like we're in this space where people want to use that data, but we're also doing that and some AI. Like, this is the challenge and the opportunity at the moment.
Totally. And I got to say, doing nothing is an increasingly untenable position. It's probably already untenable.
Yeah.
So from the top, you've got, leaders who are probably using it personally, and then, saying down to their teams, like, why aren't we, doing it? This is, it's going to change everything. At a business level, you're probably dealing with, IT, legal, risk teams that are like, I don't really understand what's going on here. My job is to protect, the company and the data. Like, there's risks here. So they're kind of pumping the brakes because they can't get their heads around, quite reasonably what's happening.
Correct. And from that, it's a safety perspective rather than an acceleration or a revenue opportunity perspective. It's that safety first perspective.
Absolutely. Then you've got, workforces that are seeing the beginnings of, people or companies like laying people off, looking for, efficiency or cost out of the business. And then, other people that are perhaps, engaged or interested in the space that are, listening to guys like Jeffrey Hinton and, other guests on, Diary of a CEO and others just saying like, the world's going to end.
Yeah.
Basically, we're all screwed. So it's fair for people to be terrified at the prospect of, what we're moving into. I take a different approach. I'm an optimist, eternal optimist. And I think my spirituality and the journey that I've been on over the last few years is, and this kind of practice of focusing on the present, tuning in to the signal, kind of turning off the noise. I think it's a good way to be, because you're trying to be, fluid and just embracing change. I think over time we're going to see that people, this new divide or a fault line between people that take a growth mindset or a scarcity mindset to this change, that the people that excel are going to be the ones that really lean into change. And I think people that are resistant to change are going to struggle. So there's probably something, at an individual personal development level for all of us in that. But what New Dialogue does essentially is helps organizations to drop an open source large language model into their own secure environment.
Beautiful.
And that's a pretty familiar strategy for tech leaders that, behind our firewall, on-prem, I get to understand the data never leaves. It's not just about data. It's about, privacy and security. It's also about being able to explain, how you're using the AI, being able to, provide information to an auditor or a regulator. All of this stuff is coming. I mean, it's already there.
Yeah.
We're calls for an AI Act. I mean, a lot of this stuff already applies, right? It's just like the technology's there, but your obligations to explain how you're handling sensitive data, this is an enforcement issue. Now, I mean, without getting into the debate of whether or not we need a specific AI Act or not, I'm often on the lines of if it's well drafted, then it can actually help industry because they know that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
But organisations aren't ready for this, and if you're using an opaque model, I mean, try explaining to someone like how it worked, rolling it back, saying what version of the model that you've actually used. So giving organisations control over this helps them to create a safe space where they can give their teams permission to speak freely with this amazing technology that they're already using in their private lives, perhaps already, using sensitive company data.
Potentially.
Yeah, but, and why are they doing that? Because they can see like the value of this technology to help them in their work. So it's exciting because it's simple.
Yeah.
We're in market working with customers already that are seeing the value of our offering, and it's being validated by the recent moves of big tech players. OpenAI has just released its first open source model since 2019. Yeah. DeepSeek at the start of the year really shook things up for everyone. We're model agnostic. Like we see a new model come to market, it's like awesome. We get to play with something else, and the new OpenAI models are incredible. And GPT-5, I don't know, maybe when this is published, GPT-5 is going to be out and it's going to blow everyone's socks off. The cycle times are so fast at the moment, and it's really hard to keep up. Which I think my earlier point on being fluid and present and just trying to kind of focus on what matters, like this. Focusing on the present and being calm is actually going to be a really important skill for everyone, because there's just so much noise and change at the moment.
And the change is consistent. That's going to be the only consistent, right? As you said, I think the big part for you, or the big sell, like from my perspective, is like that agnostic angle as well. Is you're going to allow people to play with what tools they see best fit, and then you allow them to have that control in there. Because, as you said, a lot of times technology moves really quick, and then the legal side, follows behind. And if you're not moving with it, all the organisations at the moment want to move quickly, but are being held back by the legal and compliance and risk angles at the moment. So there's that, as you said, that different mindsets playing within organisations at the moment.
Yeah. Like a brief parallel to my experience building Virtual, but like 2016, 2017 was when we started working on it. 17 was when the legislation was passed. Blockchain, ICOs, all the rage.
Yeah.
And, here we were building a regulated business, waiting for legislation, and people just telling us like, you're nuts. Like, technology's out here. People are raising, millions of dollars on a white paper, and, this is going to be, and just saying like, that was the future. Like, you don't need, we're free from the shackles of regulation. And I was like, as a securities lawyer, I was just like, I can't see government acquiescing on this, giving up their right, their obligation and their duty to police this area. And I'm talking about blockchain rather than, Bitcoin in particular. We'll probably have another podcast talking about, cryptocurrencies. But that like we made a bet on regulation that investors and people trust investing through a regulated environment, and that was the right call, and I think that should be the approach, making sure that the rules are right, because that protects us all. And I think it's a similar thing here. Is that government's not. I just don't see government giving up. It's going to be hard. It's probably harder than it's ever been before because of the geopolitical issues and everyone's race to AGI. But it's part of the optimist in me, and my training as a lawyer and officer of the court and the rule of law and what we have to protect. Otherwise, it's a state of nature, and we're back to kind of tribalism, and I don't know that that's good. I still have faith in our institutions, and that's my frame of reference.
Yeah, as you said, for all the good that can be done with AI, there's another side to it.
Yeah,
without the guidelines. So, and I think that's again where you guys are playing. It's maybe not as sexy as just building something that moves so quickly, but it's actually building around regulations and frameworks and building for security is that part that's just the underlying foundations of which other things and the really cool things within an organization can move with a lot of speed.
Absolutely. And I had, I'm having so many amazing conversations with people at the moment. It's great to be like out of the trenches now. And, this is what I'm working on, and, having like just great conversations with people that are working in the space. But, everyone's looking for these killer use cases, like, AI is going to, do that, and highly valuable like verticals. And I'm not saying that those things haven't been uncovered, won't be uncovered, won't be important, but I think it will work best as a bottom up evolution.
Yeah.
That if you're trying to figure out how generative AI can, embed, solely embed within a workflow and, improve a certain process, if you haven't unleashed it onto your business and given them, everyone access to it, and given people the opportunity to kind of bubble things up from a grassroots level, maybe it's the wrong process.
Yeah.
Maybe it's redundant and you don't need it anymore. So I think sometimes this hyper focus for things in an old paradigm, can be limiting.
Yeah.
And I think that's what positions us as a really compelling proposition, because, and I haven't kind of spent time talking about the genesis of New Dialogue, but it's being spun out of Centric Minds, which, is a 20-year-old business, has 500 clients around the world, some really impressive clients, government regulated businesses. They provide knowledge management software. They've been helping businesses with knowledge bases and intranets as an alternative to SharePoint, OneDrive. So like businesses choosing Centric Minds over some of the biggest software companies in the world, but we saw that, that paradigm, well, we're under a new paradigm now where people want to talk to their data, and unlocking that knowledge and, getting that across teams. That's where the magic starts to happen, but you have to start there.
Yeah. Matt, I think the combination of that knowledge base, SaaS, enterprise level experience, overlaid with everything you've done in and around that startup space, worked with a number of different companies. I love the combination of experiences here that sets you up as a team really well to take on this space.
Absolutely.
So what I'm hearing though, your big solution here is an opportunity for putting in security in a base layer infrastructure to enable companies to really take advantage of AI in a safe and secure environment. That's
absolutely. And the key differentiator is rapid deployment, speed. So, if companies want to do this, typically it involves standing up, very specialized engineering resources to deploy the open source model. And, that can take months, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in build if it's a large organization, ongoing OpEx.
Trying to find really good engineering talent.
Trying to find, which is getting harder. 1.5 billion offered by Zuck to the Thinking Machines Lab guy from Perth. It was just incredible. But we can get companies online in days.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
The way that we go to market typically is a $15,000 60-day pilot.
Yeah, and
we're deploy in days, get the business, rather than focusing on an engineering product, we've got a product that the engineering and tech team will understand, they can inspect, but then just give it to the business and let them do their thing and, give them access to all of the company's knowledge and then, see what they do.
And I imagine they can section off different parts of the knowledge base, so who can access what?
Absolutely. Like that's all of this stuff has been built in because they are things that, 20 years of knowledge of building knowledge bases, customers expect. So, that's the heritage of our product.
I love it. I think there's opportunities there where we'll see a lot of bad use cases at the moment within a company data being fed into having access to, and then people's intricate data being accessible by other people. And we're going to see some bad PR around that, I imagine, over the coming weeks.
Yeah, of course. And look, I mean, to his credit, Sam Altman, he's cautioning people on this stuff. Like he came out the other week on a podcast just telling people, like, don't share like confidential. Basically, don't trust us. I don't know if he actually said that directly, but he's reminding people that like stuff that you feed in, it can be discoverable under a legal process. So
if you're using it as your psychologist, as a psychiatrist, and which people are with good results sometimes at the moment, but there's some danger and security elements to that.
We're all just figuring this out.
Yeah, mate, I love it. Do we have it's moving so quickly at the moment. What's the next 6 months, 12 months look like? Are we looking 12 months ahead? Do we have an idea, picture of what that looks like?
Anyone that has high conviction on what the future is going to look like, I think is totally misguided at the moment. As I was saying before, the cycle time's so fast. It's which again, I think is why it's daily practice. It's it's mindfulness. It's taking time out to just be still. And keeping an open mind. It is a really exciting time for everyone. It can be daunting. So I think just taking the time to, be calm, but also get involved and be open.
You mentioned get involved. Any advice for places to go, people to follow when somebody's maybe a little bit behind the time or trying to catch up to what's going on? Do you have any people that you recommend to others?
I've been following Ethan Mollick's work for years because he was one of the early academics who was writing on equity crowdfunding years ago, and he's become a real thought leader in AI and does like incredible work, up to the minute work on all of the large language models. He gets early access to stuff, so if you're kind of following him. And you want to kind of stay up to the minute in this space, probably can't go wrong. Other than that, like Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO.
He's had some phenomenal guests lately.
It's incredible. And I'm loving, I suppose, the evolution, like his journey and the things that, that he's asking and he's learning. He's so AI focused at the moment, which is telling as well. Like it's the biggest story. And
he's got different perspectives coming in there as well. As you said, you've got somebody super positive about the future, but it's got doomsday. But it's great to see there's the variety of different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think, just staying ahead of the game. So like reading, just staying involved and interested in what government is doing. Productivity summits coming up, follow the commentary on that, just see how people are, positioning for this discourse. But productivity is going to be the biggest issue of this term of government, and AI is the biggest sub-issue of that issue. Yeah. So it's all about AI.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest driver, right? So also another place to follow. I know I've subscribed. You've got a newsletter coming out at the moment that you're publishing.
Yep.
Give us a quick overview of that, and then a quick overview of where people can follow you, and we'll wrap her up.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for the reminder to plug myself. But open dialogue. So we're publishing a weekly newsletter. It's your kind of 3 biggest stories in the world of AI. It's my lens. It's not just all of the American stuff, as much as it is really important, but it's kind of looking at how this relates to Australians and Australia as well, and then also include some cool stuff like a AI generated Nick Cave video, which I had this week. So yeah, interesting stuff that I find from time to time. You can get it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, perfect. Follow Matt on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn, yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm friendly and really enjoy the platform to start conversations with people. If you're an enterprise and you're thinking about how to start in your AI journey in a safe way, check out newdialogue.com or just reach out to me.
Beautiful. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Yeah.